Good morning, everybody. This is Pastor John with another edition of Monday Morning Quarterback. So yesterday we didn't have a sermon because we had our wonderful Christmas cantata. However, the scripture that we read was Matthew 11, verses 2 through 11. And this is when Jesus, or when John the Baptizer's disciples come to Jesus, and they say, are you the guy? Are you the one that we were talking about? Are you the Messiah? And Jesus doesn't, as Jesus often did, he doesn't give them a straight yes or no answer. Because he wants them to think, okay? But he tells them this. He says, go tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight. The lame walk. Those with the skin disease are cleaned. The deaf hear. The dead are raised. And the poor have the good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me. So what Jesus is basically saying is, you're asking me if I'm the Messiah. Well, am I behaving like that? Am I bearing the fruit of that? And there's two important things in this little encounter that I want to highlight. The first important thing is that it's the standard that Jesus sets, okay? When we think of someone great, when we think of, just someone out of this world, we think of someone that's like super talented, maybe, who can sing like an angel, or someone who can, run a football, faster than anyone, or someone who can do all these things, we think of like Saquon Barkley, doing a reverse, jump over a defender or something, leaving them in the dust. Those are the kinds of things that we think of when we think of greatness. Okay, so if we were asking that question and we were saying, are you the Messiah? We'd be wanting all of the bells and whistles, all of the pomp and circumstance, all of the CGI special effects. We'd want it all, because that's what it's going to take to impress us. And Jesus is saying, well, are the people that the world forgot being taken care of? There's your answer. So that's the first thing I want to point out about this encounter from Matthew 11, verses 2 through 11, which I encourage you to read. Jesus is saying, this is how you'll know the Messiah, when these things happen. And that's the standard. He never does say, oh, and by the way, I moved this mountain, or I did this, He's saying, when I loved these people, when I cured these people, when I healed these people, when I welcomed these people, that's how you know the Messiah is coming. So the first thing is, what's required from us is a change of consciousness about what we consider great to be. And this shouldn't be new, because the Gospels are full of these examples. Jesus saying, the first shall be last, the last shall be first, the greatest among you will be servant of all these things. So this shouldn't be news, but it's an important reminder. The second thing is more subtle, but it's definitely there. The disciples, John's disciples ask Jesus if he's the Messiah. And again, Jesus doesn't give them a straight answer. He gives them, a story, basically. And to me, what that signifies, and Jesus does this all the time, he always answers a question, or with a parable, or something else. He never just gives a straight yes or no answer. And I think the reason for that is because the kingdom of heaven is something that Jesus wants us to engage in, okay? If I give you an answer, you go, oh, okay, now I know the answer. And you go away, and you check that off, and you think you're going to get an A on the test. But if Jesus says, well, he wants to know if I'm the Messiah, this is what's happening. The poor are having the good news preached to them. The blind see. The lame walk. What do you think? Jesus is then drawing us in to the story. He's engaging us in the story. And that's not just how Jesus functioned. That's how salvation works. We actually have a role in our own salvation. And I'll be very clear. I know it's grounded in what Jesus did on the cross and in the resurrection that followed. Yes. But we also have a role. Salvation is sort of a call and response relationship. Jesus calls and we respond. And so, we are not just passive agents in the story of our own salvation. We are not just passive agents in the story of our lives. Jesus calls us. Jesus compels us. Jesus equips us. All these things. But we are called to respond. So 2 things to remember from Matthew 11, 2 through 11. And again, which I encourage you to go read. The 2 things to remember are the standard that Jesus sets for greatness. And Jesus calls us to be partners in the activity of our own salvation. Something to think about. Have a wonderful week, my friends. God bless.